Imagine for a second that the most precious thing in your life just vanishes. Gone. No note, no witness, just an empty room where a child used to sleep. Now imagine you're that child's mother or her stepfather. What do? Do you scream? Do you call the police until your fingers bleed? Do you tear the streets apart with your bare hands just looking for her? Of course you do, because that's the only human reaction to losing a child. But in the affluent, quiet suburb of Cornelius, North Carolina, inside a beautiful 2-story home, two parents did something else. They didn't scream. They didn't call the police. They went about their lives. They got oil changes. They went on road trips. They burned items in their backyard. For 22 days, nobody even knew that 11-year-old Madalina Cojocari was missing. 22 days of silence. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't come from a frantic parent. It came because a school counselor asked, "Where is Madalina?" This isn't just a story about a missing girl. This is a story about secrets rotting behind closed doors. It's about a mother who claims she was protecting her child from danger, a stepfather who claims he simply didn't know, and a timeline so full of holes, it's terrifying. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the fam. My name is Zara, and on this channel, we dive deep into true crime cases. We try to shine a light on cases like these, which have no answers yet. If you're as passionate about these cases as I am, please hit the subscribe button right now, and seriously, hit the like button too. It helps the channel so much. It tells YouTube to share this video to more people and that this story matters. Also, for those of you who want to become a more active part of this community, I'd love for you to consider becoming a channel member. When you join, you get instant access to our private Discord server, and that's where we can just keep the conversation going and have in-depth discussions about the cases we cover on here, or share theories and ideas, and you can even suggest some cases for me to cover on there. And honestly, we can just chat about anything and everything, and yeah, I'd love to have you on there. So if that sounds like your kind of place, just click the join button below this video. And okay, I don't have a coffee today. I really want one. But if you do, grab it and let's get into it. Now, before Madalina ended up in North Carolina, she started her life in a country called Moldova. So let's begin there. Moldova is one of the poorest countries in Europe. It's a place where traditional family values are huge. People get married really young there. They have kids, lots of kids, and families often live with 3 generations under the one roof. But there's a massive catch. The economy is so bad that about 1 in 7 Moldovans has to leave the country just to find work abroad and send money home. Now, although there's that traditional family value, get married young, have kids, be happy, due to the financial strain, it's super common for men to leave their families to find work in places like Russia or Western Europe. And sometimes they send money back, but often they just stop calling and start new lives elsewhere, leaving their wives and kids to fend for themselves. Financial pressure, migration, and infidelity are key reasons for men leaving, while many women often assume full responsibility for the kids, creating this really complex, contradictory life of traditional values and then unstable, often abandoned family structures. And this is exactly what happened to Diana Cojocari. Diana used to work as a translator and came from a well-known musician family, but her partner, her boyfriend, and Madalina's biological father walked out on them. Diana was only 22 years old and she was stuck. She had no money, no job, and no government support. So she became desperate for a better life for her and her daughter. She went onto a dating site, although some people say it was a mail order bride site, and it was called Global Ladies, to try and find a man overseas. And this is where she met a man named Christopher Palmiter. Now, strangely enough, the timeline didn't make sense to me here in all of the articles they were talking about their relationship, because it's claimed she met Christopher online in 2008, but Madalina was born on April 11th, 2011. So how does that work? So What I'm assuming is that Diana was already on this matchmaking site, like when she was single. She met Christopher and they fizzled out. And then she met Madalina's father after this, had her baby with him. And then when he left, she went back onto the dating site and then rekindled things with Christopher. Now, they rekindled their relationship in 2015, and he flew down to Moldova to spend time with Diana and Madalina. And there was some kind of promise of a future together. But just a few months later, by December of that year, Christopher brought Diana and her 3-year-old daughter, Madalina, over to North Carolina to live with him. They got married in January 2016 and moved into a nice 2-story home in Cornelius, North Carolina, which Christopher could afford because he had a well-paying job in an engineering firm. As you can imagine, this was a huge change for Diana and Madalina, a massive upgrade, you could say. And it's believed that Diana actually lied to Christopher about her real age. She told him she was born in 1979 when she was actually born in 1985. So in 2016, when they got married, she was 31, but Christopher believed she was actually 37 and only found out her real age when they applied for the marriage certificate. Christopher at the time was 54 years old, so 23 years her senior. Now, you would think that they knew what they were getting into, given they didn't really know each other well, but not really, because the fairy tale only lasted a couple of years, if that. By 2018, they were living in separate bedrooms and had a loveless and sexless marriage, according to Christopher. It's believed their differing views on religion and way of life is what contributed to this. Christopher was a Christian with fairly traditional values, and Diana, although she was raised in the Russian Orthodox faith, Diana was leaning more towards the spiritual side. She had told Christopher this before they got married, but according to Christopher, her spiritual obsessions grew and grew, and then their marriage just kind of went downhill. In 2018, Diana chose to stop sleeping in the same room with her husband and instead slept on a trundle that was stored beneath Madalina's bed. By 2021, Chris said Diana would stay up late into the night to chant prayers as a disciple of Elizabeth Clare Prophet, who was an American spiritual leader and author. Diana was open about her faith, and she posted videos on her social media accounts where she'd praise violence, which is part of and encouraged by Kundalini. Chanting faster gave Diana more prayer contact, like earning more points, according to Christopher, and she would also include Madalina in these chants, and they would do them together. Christopher said he tried to join Diana, learn her chants and meditations, but it just wouldn't do it for him. She may have also been a follower of Yogi Bhajan, his new age faith Kundalini, which combines spiritual awakening with yoga. And if you didn't know this guy, Yogi, he was actually outed as a fraud and predator later because the stuff he says is wild. By 2022, Christopher really couldn't sleep properly because Diana would stay up so late chanting so loudly that it almost sounded like she was screaming at the top of her lungs. Part of her spiritual activities would include Diana burning things in the backyard. They had a fire pit, and then progressing to things that couldn't burn, like a metal coat rack or a stainless steel travel mugs. Christopher said he would do one ritual with Diana where he would sit in a chair and she would take a knife and wave it over his head to cut the strings that demons above him had attached. She also had Madalina participate in the same ritual. Christopher said he never had been in a serious relationship since college, so he expected love from this marriage to Diana, but he didn't get any. Diana was very distant, and she would let him kiss her on the cheek before bed most nights and possibly kiss her on the lips for special occasions like birthdays or Christmas. But other than that, it was a very, very distant relationship. And Christopher claimed that he had never, ever been intimate with Diana. So clearly this marriage to Diana, what it seems like, was a marriage of convenience. But to Chris, maybe he really was trying to find love. And randomly, they also apparently had the house filled with over 12 cats at any time. I think these were Chris's cats. And these cats would just relieve themselves wherever and whenever. And sometimes they would burn the sofa cushions and the mattress that would be ruined by the cats. They would just go and burn them in their backyard. So it was just a strange household. Also, in terms of what the neighborhood locals thought about the family, they thought that they were a normal family. The family would go to a local restaurant up to 3 times a week for dinner, and witnesses would say that Christopher would always be the one to talk. Diana was rarely seen outside of the house by herself, and Christopher would always accompany them, even if Madalina was just playing or going trick-or-treating. Like, she wasn't allowed to play outside by herself, which I think is actually okay. But it just seems like a lot of like witnesses or neighbors are kind of giving the hint that Christopher was controlling, right? And I mean, we never really know what goes on in a family, but to the outsiders, that's kind of what it looked like. So to sum it up, Madalina was taken from one shit show to another, and it just seems like a really crap way to live. Even though she had a roof over her head and she was able to go to school, that household she was in does not seem happy, both due to her mother's behavior and her stepdad's. Madalina was known to be friendly and sweet. She was quiet and withdrawn. She was pretty shy, but she loved horseback riding. She would wear her jacket often, even if it was warm outside, and people believed it was possibly to just comfort herself. And she was just this really sweet, polite, smart girl. And people said she was a joy. Let's go to Monday, November 21st, 2022. It's a typical afternoon in Cornelius. At exactly 4:59 p.m., the school bus pulls up to the curb of a large beige house with a manicured lawn. The doors open and out steps Madalina. She's 11 years old. She's wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and these bright, vibrant pink and purple Adidas shoes. She adjusts her backpack. She walks up the driveway, and there's absolutely nothing in this footage that screams danger or that something's wrong. She doesn't look scared. She doesn't look like she's running away. She just looks like a 6th grader coming home from school. She walks toward that front door. She opens it. She steps inside, and that is the last time the world ever sees Madalina. Once that door clicks shut, she enters this black hole. Logic tells us that inside that house, her mother, Diana, and her stepfather, Christopher, are waiting. Logic tells us that dinner was made that night, homework was checked, the routine of life as a family just continued. But as we dive into what happened next, logic just completely falls apart. Because what we know now, what investigators have pieced together from phone data, countless interrogations, and forensic searches, is that the normalcy within that house was a lie. Within 48 hours of this video, chaos would erupt. But on this Monday, it was just a girl walking to her home. And if you were a neighbor or someone walking your dog, you wouldn't have looked twice. And that is what makes this so haunting. The danger wasn't out there or on the street. It was waiting for her inside that home. So Madalina is home. Monday passes, Tuesday passes. Then comes Wednesday, November 23rd, the night before Thanksgiving. And this is where the timeline goes wrong. This is where the story splits into, I guess, 2 different narratives. According to Diana, this Wednesday night is the tipping point. She claims that she and Christopher got into a massive argument. We don't know the exact trigger, but the tension in this house had been building up for years. We're talking about a marriage that seemed transactional, a household described by investigators as strange and secluded. And Diana said she saw Madalina going to bed at around 10 p.m. that night. Diana says the fight between her and Christopher was so bad that Christopher stormed out, or at least he prepared to storm out, because the next morning, Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, Christopher gets into his car and drives to Michigan to visit family. He leaves Diana behind on Thanksgiving. Diana says that on Thanksgiving morning, after Christopher had left at around 11:30 a.m., she goes into Madalina's room to wake her up. And when she walks in, the bed was empty. But instead of calling Christopher to check, did you take Madalina with you? Which again, to me is odd, because who takes a child on a long distance trip without both parents knowing, especially if it's not your actual child, it's your stepchild. But from what Diana said, she's just assumed Madalina was with Christopher. She does nothing. She waits. She later tells investigators, and I want you to really listen to this, okay? She didn't call the police because she felt it would cause a conflict with Christopher. She claimed she was afraid of him. She claimed she thought he had taken Madalina to Michigan, or that he had hidden her somewhere. So she sat in that house alone on Thanksgiving while her daughter was gone. Now pause here, because Christopher claims that he left for Michigan on November 23rd, 2022, the night before Thanksgiving. He tells police he went to his family's home in Michigan to recover some items, and I don't know what that means. And he told police that he hadn't seen Madalina for a week at that point. He assumed she was fine. When he returned home on November 26th at 7 p.m., he asked Diana where Madalina was, but Diana claims she didn't know. She then asked Christopher if he knew where Madalina was, and Christopher said he didn't know and he never took her with him. Christopher then said over the next few weeks, he asked Diana multiple times where Madalina was. He asked Diana if she had hidden Madalina, but she would not give him a straight answer. They both apparently continued accusing each other of hiding Madalina, but despite Madalina being missing for days, then weeks, neither of them reported her missing to the police. Neither of them picks up the phone. For the next 3 weeks, 3 weeks, you guys, they live in this house together. They eat meals, they sleep. Diana goes to get the oil changed in her car. Christopher goes to work, all while an 11-year-old girl is missing, Diana's own daughter. How does that happen? How do two adults exist in a shared home for 22 days knowing a child is gone and no one knows where she is and never once asked for help? Unless they already knew exactly where she was or exactly what happened to her. Now, the great thing in this case is that the school, Bailey Middle School in Cornelius, really did the right thing. Madalina's last recorded day at school was November 21st, 2022, like I said. So the last time she was seen getting off the bus. Mrs. D. Lampkin, who is a 6th grade school counselor at Madalina School, was notified that Madalina had not been attending school. Calls were made to Madalina's house, but most of them went unanswered. I believe they also had made multiple repeated calls and maybe even sent letters, but all of them, went unanswered. And then on December 12th, 2022, Bailey Middle School Resource Officer Jay Nobles and Mrs. Lampkin went to Madalina's home because it had now been weeks and she had not attended school since November 21st. So they rang the bell multiple times, but nobody answered the door. So they ended up leaving a truancy packet at the door. So in North Carolina, this was interesting to me because I don't think we have this here. I mean, I've never heard of it. They have district-specific truancy packets or policies requiring regular attendance at school for children aged 7 to 16. The next step is to notify parents after 3 unexcused absences, followed by a letter after 6 absences, and then potential court action for 10 plus unexcused absences. It's all school dependent, but that's the rough guide. And given that Madalina had missed 3 weeks of school, the court action threat was now real. Okay, so I just looked it up. In Australia, we have the same thing. I did not even know that. So it's the same thing. Children aged 6 to 17 and parents are required to legally send the kids to school. And then for us, we have financial fines, like $102. And yeah, same thing. Yeah, it seems like we more so get fines here and then eventually you'll be convicted. I didn't know that. So on December 14th, 2022, Mrs. Lampkin then called Diana again. And when she finally answered, she asked to meet Madalina about her absences from school. Diana then tells Mrs. Lampkin, okay, I'll bring Madalina into the school tomorrow to discuss. However, you and I know Diana herself doesn't know where Madalina is. So Diana arrived at the school the following morning, December 15th. And then when she rocks up without her daughter, Mrs. Lampkin and the school resource officer, Jay Nobles, were like, okay, something's up. Diana then admits that Madalina was missing since noon on November 22nd. Then she says, no, actually, she's been missing since November 23rd at 10 p.m. Like, it's all so fishy and really upsetting. The school obviously then reported Madalina missing to the police that same day. And then that same day, police arrive at their home. During the search of the family's home, police found an area of the kitchen that was boarded up with plywood. And when they asked about this, Christopher said that he was building a separate apartment inside that home. In total, 25 items were seized, including 3 iPhones. The house was then searched a couple more times in January 2023 and February, I believe. And a hard drive was seized, and then Diana's car was searched. A canine unit was present, and they detected drugs on the driver's side door. And inside the car, they found a Moldovan debit card belonging to Diana, and then Madalina's Romanian and Moldovan passports, Diana's Romanian passport, and miscellaneous education and work certificates. While the world was oblivious, busy with Thanksgiving leftovers and Christmas shopping, something was happening in the backyard of that home. This isn't speculation. This comes directly from search warrants that were finally unsealed in early 2025. Neighbors reported seeing smoke, not just, a cozy winter bonfire, but a fire that burned for days. On November 30th, police were called to their home after a fire was seen burning in their backyard, and it later turned out to be Diana burning this stuff, and she was burning furniture in their backyard. And between November 23rd, the night of the fight, and December 10th, investigators believe significant evidence was destroyed in a fire pit in that backyard. So let's look at a list of what was actually burned because it's not just trash. So first, there was a mattress, Madalina's mattress, okay? And Christopher later told police that he saw Diana hauling a mattress out of the house. But it wasn't just tossed, it was cut up, it was destroyed. Now, why do you burn a mattress? Okay, in the world of forensics, a mattress is like a sponge. It holds biological evidence better than almost anything else: urine, saliva, and blood. If something happened to Madalina in her bedroom, if she was hurt or worse, that mattress would be the primary witness, and Diana allegedly torched it. But it gets worse, okay? They burned couch cushions, they burned carpet that had been ripped up from the spare bedroom floor, and most heartbreaking of all, they burned family photos. Warrants detail that investigators found the charred remains of photographs of the family in the ash. Why would you burn family photos? As a parent, that's one of the items in life you cherish the most, photos of your child. Then, if you are a mother whose child is missing, photographs are your lifeline. They are the thing you hold closest to you. They are the thing you give to the news stations. You don't burn them. You don't erase the memory of your child unless you're trying to erase the child herself. Christopher told police he saw Diana burning things. He claimed he saw unburnable items in the pit, like, the stainless steel travel mugs, metal racks, and he said the pit was full of ash one day and then cleaned out the next. He watched this happen and he did nothing. The fire pit isn't just a disposal site, it's a signal fire. It tells us that whatever happened to Madalina, it likely happened inside that house and it left a mess that needed to be cleaned up with fire. When police finally got involved, which we'll get to in a moment, they separated Diana and Christopher. On December 17th, 2022, both Christopher and Diana were arrested and charged with failing to report the disappearance of a child. And like I said, what emerged were two stories that didn't just contradict each other, they were literally at war with each other. So let's start with Diana, okay? Her defense from day one was, I was protecting us. She painted Christopher as a danger. She told investigators that she didn't report Madalina missing because she felt Christopher had put the family in jeopardy. She hinted at debts owing to bad people that Christopher might know. She implied that maybe he took Madalina to Michigan and gave her away. Christopher had recently lost his high-paying job and he started his own business selling plaques. So was this a motive? Was he using Madalina as some financial incentive? Diana positioned herself as a hostage in her own home, too terrified to pick up the phone. However, she did contact her family in Moldova about the situation and they told her to just call the police. So she told police that Madalina did not have a phone, but she did have a backpack and some clothes of hers were missing from the house. She said Madalina didn't know anyone that was close to her, like, any other family, and she did not have any friends that she would have gone to stay with. But here's the problem with that. Diana had a phone. She had a car. Then police discovered that Diana had lied to them. It's believed that sometime between November 22nd and December 15th, Diana drove her Prius to Madison County, North Carolina. We know from cell phone data that she left the house multiple times. She got that oil change on December 3rd in Hickory, North Carolina. And then, doing that, she was not a prisoner. She told police she went to the mountains to search for Madalina. Why? What did you know? Then we find out Diana had been in contact with a distant relative who turned out to be her nephew, maybe, but his name was Octavian, and they spoke extensively on December 2nd, 2022. Diana allegedly asked Octavian if he could smuggle them away from Christopher because she was in a bad marriage and she wanted to leave him. To make matters worse, Octavian is believed to be involved with drug trafficking, and police allege that those involved in those activities are also likely to be involved in human trafficking activities. Then on April 14th, 2023, 3 days after Madalina's 12th birthday, Diana was found to be in possession of a baggie with a white powdery substance while in prison. It was found to be cocaine and fentanyl, and Diana claimed that it wasn't hers and she had just found it in the shower. Then you have Christopher. His defense, I'm just oblivious. He claimed in court and in interviews that he genuinely thought Madalina was safe. He said they live separate lives under the same roof. He slept in a different room. He said that when he came back from Michigan, he just assumed Madalina was holed up in her bedroom or staying with Diana's relatives. He just didn't question it. He had the role of the checked out stepfather. But remember the fire pit? He admitted to seeing Diana burn Madalina's mattress. So can you really be oblivious when your wife is burning her daughter's mattress and family photos in the backyard? Yes, she had done these rituals before, but her daughter's mattress, which she sleeps on, did she buy a new mattress? No. Can you really be checked out when your stepdaughter, who you've lived with for years, is nowhere to be seen for 3 weeks? When your wife is burning the mattress that she would technically sleep on, that you believe she was sleeping on while holed up in her room? When you yourself admitted that you questioned Diana multiple times on where she was. So how could you believe that she was holed up in her room, The ignorance defense is just unrealistic, It's more so he's going with, if I didn't see it, I can't be charged with it. Also on December 16th, Christopher sent a message on Facebook, not sure who he sent it to, maybe his brothers, but he acknowledged the family was in some kind of investigation. So he said, "We are in some kind of investigation because Maddie is missing and the local police have taken all of our electronics. Luckily, I have an old phone. Although they did not take my personal computer because they probably overlooked it. Diana is using it now to call her parents." On December 19th, 2022, Christopher appeared in court and his bond was set at $200,000. But while Christopher was playing dumb and the fire pit was burning with the missing child's items, Diana was on the move. So let's talk about what we know about her drive to the mountains. By the way, during this period, the internet in their house went down, which allegedly made Christopher have to go into the office. Don't know which office, but that office that he drove to was 90 minutes away. So he was gone for a significant amount of time during the day, which Diana claims is why she was free to drive to the mountains. In the days after Madalina vanished, specifically between December 1st and December 5th, Diana drove west. She went into the mountains, Madison County, Lonesome Mountain Road, Sugar Mountain. These are all really rugged, remote areas, dense forests, steep cliffs, places you can go for miles without seeing another soul. Why is a mother whose child is supposedly missing driving 4 hours into the wilderness alone? Was she looking for Madalina, or was she hiding her? Or was she hiding evidence? There was one piece of evidence from this time that is just absolutely baffling. So on December 2nd, while near the mountains, Diana, she sends a text message on WhatsApp to her cousin, and it says, "I need to talk to you from me and Madalina." From me and Madalina. She signs the text as if Madalina is right there next to her, Is this proof of life? Was Madalina in the car alive, being smuggled to a safe house? Or was this a decoy? Was this Diana creating a digital paper trail to make it look like Madalina was still alive days after she had actually died or was sent somewhere else? But that also doesn't make sense because that was on December 3rd and she claimed the last time she saw Madalina was over a week prior. Then on the same day, December 3rd, Diana was seen at a service station in Hickory, North Carolina, getting an oil change in her car. And the attendant verified that while children's toys were in the car, there was no child actually in the car with her. Investigators have scoured those mountains. They've searched pull-offs, ravines, hiking trails, and these mountains are huge, and they are very, very good at keeping secrets. Now we have to zoom out because this case isn't just local to North Carolina. Diana is a Moldovan national, and during those 22 days of silence, she wasn't just texting cousins, she was moving money. Warrants revealed that Diana wired a significant amount of cash, $4,000 in total, to a priest in Moldova named Petru Constantine. $2,000 on December 5th and then another $2,000 on December 12th. Like, so close to the last time Madalina was seen. It's just so fishy, which makes me so annoyed. Why is a woman who was supposedly terrified and paralyzed by fear of her husband sending thousands of dollars to a priest halfway around the world? Was this smuggling money? Was this her paying someone to help get Madalina out of the country? Investigators looked hard at this. The theory was that maybe, just maybe, Diana handed Madalina off to a coyote or a trafficker to get her back to Moldova away from Christopher. The warrants even mentioned Diana asking relatives if they knew anyone who could help smuggle her and Madalina out. But there is no record of Madalina leaving the US at all. No flight manifest, no border crossing footage. So what was the money for? A darker theory kind of exists, Was it penance? Was it money for prayers? In the Orthodox faith, you often pay for liturgies or prayers for the deceased. Was Diana paying for her daughter's funeral rites conducted in secret, thousands of miles away? There were also connections to individuals with history in drug trafficking, like Octavian. Now, we have to be careful because these are leads mentioned in police documents. They're not proven convictions linked to this case, but it paints a picture of the world Diana might have been reaching out to. Desperate people do desperate things, and if she tried to hire criminals to smuggle her daughter away, things could have gone very wrong very quickly. But my question also was, if you have $4,000, it didn't seem like that money was going to be missed if Christopher didn't even notice. You could have just set money aside for yourself and then left Christopher if that was such a bad situation you were in. Once Diana was finally arrested in December, she didn't stop talking, but she wasn't talking to the police. She was talking to her mother in Moldova on a jail phone line that she knew was being recorded. And these calls are also just so bizarre. In one conversation, Diana and her mother discuss a bag of money. Diana speculates openly that maybe Christopher gave the girl away for money. She talks about him selling Madalina. Now, is this a genuine accusation? Does she truly believe her husband is a monster who trafficked their child? Or is she planting seeds for her defense? Look, I'm the victim here. He sold my daughter. She talks about being followed. She talks about danger, and it feels like paranoia. But as the saying goes, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you. However, investigators have found no bag of money in Christopher's possession, no sudden influx of cash, just a man living in a messy house with heaps of cats claiming he knows nothing. The trafficking theory is kind of one that gives us hope, though, even though it is really horrific. You would hope she didn't have to go through that, because it does imply, though, that Madalina is alive somewhere, but it's also the theory with the least physical evidence. There's no witnesses, there's no paper trail, no CCTV footage, but kids get trafficked every day in plain sight. Were these just the ramblings of a woman in a jail cell, or did Diana plan the whole thing? So with the fire pit, the mountain trips, the wire transfers, the phone calls, and the lies, surely someone was charged with murder or concealment. Something, right? Wrong. This is the most frustrating part of the story. In May 2024, the trials began, but it wasn't the justice anyone wanted. So Christopher, he went to trial first, and the charge was not for murder, not manslaughter. It was failure to report the disappearance of a child. Yep, that's it. A jury did find him guilty, and it took them less than 30 minutes. His sentence? Suspended. 30 months of probation. He walked out of that courtroom a free man. Now, in my opinion, I watched a lot of his testimony. He seems like a really broken man. I don't know if I'm convinced he's guilty and he knows where Madalina is, but he's definitely guilty of failing to report her missing. But he just really seems like an old man who's broken, and either he's really good at acting or that's truly what happened. Then Diana. She didn't even go to trial, guys. She took a plea deal. Guilty of failure to report. Her sentence? Time served. Because she had been sitting in a jail cell since December 2022, and the judge ruled that she had been punished enough. Punished enough for not knowing what happened to her daughter. She was released on May 21st, 2024. Let that sink in, guys. A child is gone. Evidence was burned. Lies were told. No report was made. And the total punishment for two people responsible for her safety was probation and time served. Why? Because of a legal concept called corpus delicti, body of the crime. Without a body, without a confession, and without forensic proof of death, like a significant amount of blood or something that possibly was burned, the state cannot prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt. And they knew they couldn't win a homicide trial yet, so they went for what they could prove, the silence, the 22 days. But for those of us watching, it feels like a giant get-out-of-jail-free loophole the size of the Grand Canyon. So where are we now? It's 2026. The media is over-reporting on this case. The yellow ribbons on the mailboxes in Cornelius that once held hope for Madalina have faded and just fallen off. Christopher is still in North Carolina serving out his probation. He filed for divorce. He is trying to move on and living in the shadow of the community that probably despises him. And Diana, she's gone. After her release in May 2024, she didn't stay to look for Madalina. According to Homeland Security, she left the United States. She was either deported or she self-deported back to Moldova. And before she left, she came to the Cornelius Police Department to collect some items. And she tells officers while she's there, I really hope Madalina is safe. It's wild. She's now thousands of miles away beyond the reach of the FBI. If she knows where the body is buried or where Madalina is actually hiding, she took that secret with her to Moldova. Their former family home just stands there, silent. Investigators have dug up the backyard. They sifted through the ash in that fire pit. They took floorboards out, but nothing. Only Christopher, Diana, and Madalina will know what happened that late November. So the timelines have been analyzed, the forensic, the lies that were told, but we have to end this by focusing on the only person who matters, which is Madalina. She would be a teenager now. She would be in high school. Where is she? So there are two main theories left. Theory one is that Diana, successfully handed Madalina off to someone. Maybe the smuggling texts were real. Maybe Madalina is in Moldova or hidden deep in the US, living under a fake name, hidden by a mother who, in a twisted, paranoid way, thought she was saving her. It's unlikely, but until a body is found, it's possible. The second theory is that something happened in that house in November. An accident, a fit of rage, and the panic that followed the 22 days of silence, the fire pit, the trip to the mountains was a clumsy, desperate cover-up by two people or one person who didn't know what else to do. The mattress makes me think of forensic evidence, blood. The fire tells a story of destruction, why burn the mattress? And the mountains tell a story of disposal. But at the same time, wouldn't there be other forensic evidence left in Madalina's room? Like, blood doesn't only stay on a mattress and get absorbed magically. Like, if the crime was committed there would be spatter evidence on the walls or other objects nearby, unless it was like a full-on Dexter-style cleanup. The FBI and the Cornelius Police Department haven't given up. There is still a reward of over $25,000 for information, but money is not going to solve this. Someone knows. Maybe it's a relative in Moldova who received a frantic phone call. Maybe it's a hiker who saw a woman digging near Mountain Road. Maybe it's someone watching this video. You just never know. Madalina Cojocari was let down by every single adult in her life. Her mother, her stepfather, the system that let them walk free, We cannot let her be forgotten. Something kind of makes me wonder about Diana, Maybe she didn't want Madalina anymore. Like, maybe it wasn't about protection, because as a mother, if you want to protect your child, right, and you want to hide her and you want her smuggled off somewhere away from this man, why would you leave the country if she is still in that country? Or if she's in Moldova now, wouldn't you be with her? Like, wouldn't there be some sighting or evidence or something coming out about Diana being seen with Madalina in Moldova? So something makes me think, like, did she just want a new life? And she was hoping that Christopher would take all the blame, and somehow it worked because she got to leave. She got to go back to Moldova, and maybe it's not a better life there. I mean, I doubt it, but did she take Chris's money with her? Like, who knows? It just doesn't seem like Christopher is guilty, but anything could be true. Look at her picture, share her face, talk about this case. It's been 4 years, but she could still be out there, because somewhere in the mountains of North Carolina or a village in Moldova, or maybe just in the backyard of that home in Cornelius, the truth is out there, and Madalina deserves to be found. What do you think happened in those 22 days? Do you believe the smuggling theory, or do you think the answer lies in that fire pit? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's keep this conversation alive, because right now it's the only voice Madalina has. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Besitos. Bye.